Welcome to a breakout session, What's New in VMware vCloud Director 1.5. My name is Dushyant Nataraj, and I'm a technical marketing manager that's been working with the product for a couple of years. I'll take you through all the new features we've introduced to make your cloud better and faster and simpler. Some notes before we get started. I'm not going to talk about any product features under development, so if you take notes, don't write any articles because it's all public information. You can read that stuff. Okay, so before I get into what's new in vCloud Director, I thought I'd give a little primer on vCloud Director 1.0 just to sort of introduce, and just so I have a sense of how many people are using vSphere. Just a quick show of hands, how many of you are using vSphere 4.0 or higher? It's impressive. So what I'll do is just spend about 5 minutes just giving you an introduction of some of the capabilities that vCloud Director adds on top of vSphere to help you build cloud infrastructures. So vCloud Director is about delivering infrastructure as a service cloud infrastructures, and it builds on top of vSphere, and it helps you build a cloud up to 20,000 VMs or 25 vCenter servers. So it really scales above and beyond vCenter servers and helps you take those resources and offer them as elastic cloud infrastructures. It creates these new abstractions or these new cloud constructs called virtual data centers. I'll talk a little bit more about virtual data centers in the next slide, but it's an important key construct that helps users. It really helps simplify the management and presenting resources to end users so they can consume in a cloud-like fashion. Security is important in the cloud, so we've got integrated security with vShield. We've got LDAP authentication. We've got role-based access controls. We've got a ton of security features to make things secure in the cloud. What is cloud without self-service? So we've got an inbuilt portal that lets users log in and self-provision virtual machines in this cloud environment. So that's pretty important, and vCloud Director provides it right out of the box. It also helps you isolate the users into containers and manage them because you're taking a vSphere environment and you're building a multi-tenant environment. So you need to isolate the users and you need to present them with a multi-tenant interface so they're only seeing the resources that they own and they use, and they're not exposed to any of the resources that other users that are using the cloud environment. And also, we've got a vCloud API, which lets you automate, which lets you integrate, which lets ISVs or other providers, third parties integrate with the vCloud system. And another important key feature is if you're familiar with VMware's strategy of working with building private clouds and public clouds, essentially using the same stack in enterprises and public clouds, helping you bridge those resources together. This is a key piece that helps you with the portability of applications across these environments without making any changes. All right, so this is one slide which will help you sort of understand all the new constructs that vCloud Director introduces and help you understand why that's important and sort of what we're doing with these in the cloud layer. So we'll start out with the foundation that all of you are familiar with. So you've got vSphere, which most of you are familiar with. And what vSphere has already delivered is we've been able to take the application and we've been able to separate that or untether it from the underlying physical infrastructure, right? So you no longer bind an application to a host or a particular storage device, and you've got the virtualization layer in place. And with that, you've been able to do these magical things such as vMotion, storage vMotion, and you've got distributed resource scheduling. There's a lot you've been able to squeeze out of your physical infrastructure because you've layered on this virtualization. So by now, most of you should have these resource pools in place. You should have these data stores in place. And you should have these port groups in place, which all help you sort of manage your applications differently. vCloud Director really wants to take that to the next level and sort of help you build multi-tenant cloud infrastructures on top of this foundation that you've already built. So we're going to help you take your infrastructure to the next level. And to do that, we're introducing these new cloud constructs called provider virtual data centers. And what it is essentially we're able to pool all the resources together that you have in vSphere and vCenter. As I mentioned, it's about 25 vCenter servers. You're able to pool all those resources together, and when you pool them together, you can create these SLA containers or these tiered resource containers called provider VDCs, right? And this is an important abstraction. This is really important because this is the underlying foundation of the hybrid cloud. and the elasticity that you get in the cloud infrastructure. So we're taking these resources, we're picking which ones are gold, which ones are silver, which ones are bronze, and we're going to treat them as shared resources in the cloud infrastructure, right? So this is what we're going to allocate to organizations and to users in the cloud. We can also manage organizations within vCloud Director. I've got marketing and finance, so this could be a private cloud. But if this is a public cloud, this could be an enterprise and an SMB both living on the same cloud, right? But the point is, all of these users are living inside the same cloud environment, and we also have powerful controls to set policies within these organization containers, right? So you can control what people can do inside these, how many VMs they can run, how many VMs they can have living on storage, what happens, you can set leases and quotas and all these different policy controls you can set within these containers. As I mentioned earlier, isolation and multi-tenancy is important. So we've got this integration with vShield that helps you sort of secure each container inside the cloud environment. So when people log in, they're only seeing resources that belong to them. They're not seeing, they don't see how big the cloud is. They only see what belongs to them. And they don't see anyone else. There's no noise neighbor problem. So we've got all these taken care of. Then we've got the notion of organization VDCs, which are essentially portions of those provider VDCs that we allocate up to the organizations, right? So organizations come in, and they have applications that they want to run in the cloud, but now they're asking a question of, what is the SLA that my application expects, right? And those SLAs map to either gold, silver, or bronze, or any other tier that you offer in the cloud. And this is important because they're no longer thinking, which data center is going to satisfy my application, or which ESX host, or which do I need a SAN versus a NAS, or they're not asking these questions. They're saying I need an SLA, and I'm willing to pay some money for it, right? So gold, silver, and bronze have different SLAs, and they also have different costs associated with them. And then you pick and choose, and we also have the ability to define different allocation models. So somebody could come in and say, hey, I want to reserve capacity in the cloud, and you can do that. Or somebody comes in and says, I want to pay as I go. I don't know how much I'm going to use. Just want to try, and as I grow, I'll just buy more. So you can make that happen. So we've got that in vCloud Director. And then finally, we also let you standardize content via catalogs. And the catalogs is an important construct because if you're an R&D organization, if you're developing applications and you want to be able to share applications, right? So your developers are making some code changes and they want to share it with the QA folks. QA folks just found a bug and they want to share it with developers. Two developers want to talk to each other. This is a powerful mechanism for them to share content inside their own organization. And to make things more exciting, if you're an ISV in the cloud, and if you want to publish, so let's say you're developing applications, and you want the entire community of users in the public cloud to be able to access your application, you can publish it out to the entire cloud. Essentially, you can think of the public cloud as your distribution channel for reaching your application to all of the consumers in the cloud. So it's a pretty easy mechanism to publish your applications. And then finally, users come in, they see the content that they want to find, they search for the content in the catalog, they find the content that they want to deploy, and then they deploy it to these organization VDCs. So that's how all the magic happens in 1.0, and hopefully that gives you a good base of the functionality that we delivered in the 1.0 product. So again, just to sort of stress the importance of that VDC construct, it's that layer of abstraction is extremely important because when you start getting users, when you start getting them used to this new level of abstraction, so thinking about what is the application, what are the demands of the application, and then mapping that to a higher level construct such as a VDC, it gives IT a different tool set to sort of manage the resources underneath. So you can grow that VDC, you can shrink that VDC down, or in some cases, let's say you want to take let's say you found this new market in a different country and you don't have the resources, or it takes a long time to set up, to acquire data centers, to acquire, to rack and stack servers and things like that, and you want to just try it out before you expand in that area, you can go lease capacity from a service provider that happens to be in that region. And you can deploy your applications with the vCloud API. There's no changes needed to the application. And you can quickly get that up and running in that service provider, right? Because the app owners and the line of businesses are only thinking about SLAs, right? They're not thinking about, is it coming from a private data center or is it coming from a public data center? So it's an important construct as we think about how we deliver cloud infrastructures. So with that introduction, I'll jump into what's new. So we've added a ton of features to vCloud Director 1.5. But essentially, we've tried to make it faster. We've tried to make it simpler to manage, and we've also tried to enhance the security that's available in the product. So I'll start with the agility or productivity improvements that we made in vCloud Director. Also, while I go through a presentation, in the interest of time, just hold on to your questions till the end. There's a microphone over there that you can walk up to. I'll try to stop 10 minutes before the end of the session, so there's plenty of time to ask questions. Excuse me. Right, so the first feature is a very exciting and exciting feature for vCloud Director. It is called fast provisioning. We're using a mechanism called link clones. Essentially, what we're doing is, so in the previous slide, I showed you how applications were being deployed from catalogs onto organization VDCs. In 1.0, that used to be a full clone. So you had these template virtual machines or applications that were in the catalog, and when you deployed, a full copy of those applications would be deployed for the end users, right? In vCloud Director 1.5, we've got technology called link clones, which essentially you don't have to copy the entire virtual machine. You're able to deploy something called as a link clone, which is essentially sharing, base images and linking these images together. So the common elements are stored only once, and it's exciting because it helps you save on storage, right? And it also dramatically improves the time for provisioning for applications. It's completely transparent to the end user because it can be enabled by the cloud administrator, and users are happy because their applications are coming up much faster. So when you create something from a template, it only takes seconds because I'll explain in the next couple of slides what these link clones are, and you'll understand them. So a full clone, you're copying the entire base image and you're creating a net new VM that's fully self-contained. In a link clone, on the other hand, we don't copy the VM. We create something known as a delta disk. The next slide will go into a little bit more detail about how these work, but that's the fundamental difference. So because we're creating these small disks, it takes a lot less space, and it also takes a lot less longer to create these VMs. So let's start out with in a typical VM, you've got writes that goes to the VMDK. You've got reads that come from the VMDK. But when you create a link clone, essentially what you're doing is you're creating this small 16 megabyte disk, right? It's a delta disk, and this is the one where writes are captured. So as writes happen, this disk really grows to accommodate those writes. So all of the new writes are saved in that disk. The reads, on the other hand, they traverse up the chain and find the base disk until the desired blocks are found, right? So if there's a read and you want to find that block, it'll just go up the chain, find the VMDK that has the desired block, and then it accesses it from there. As you create more link clones, similarly, it's as you create more links and the chain length grows, similarly, you've got new delta disks that are created for each new link clone and reads that are going up the chain to find the desired block. So that's how all of these work. And again, because it's such a small disk that we create, it takes all of a few seconds to create them, and your storage costs are also dramatically improved. So we're trying to save you more money. So when you come to Vegas, you'll have more money to have fun with. But we don't encourage gambling anyway. Enabling link clones is extremely easy. You just find the organization VDC that you want to enable it on, right-click it, go to the properties, and say, I want to enable fast provisioning, right? You can enable it on an existing provider VDC, an existing organization VDC, or you can enable it when you create an organization VDC. So if you enable it on an existing VDC, everything that was previously operating used to be a full clone. Henceforth, once you enable it, it will be link clones, right? So, right, but wait, there's more. Not only can we do link clones within a single data store, we also have technology. We worked on technology that helps you deploy link clones across data stores, right? And in fact, even across vCenter servers. So you can realize these benefits, at a cloud scale. And we do this using a mechanism called shadow VMs. I'll talk a little bit more about shadow VMs. But essentially, we're just playing a little trick in the back end. So users are able to enjoy the benefits of link clones no matter where they deploy, no matter where that template is, no matter where the target is, where they want to deploy a link clone, you're able to make that happen. So typically when you create a link clone that's running on a data store, it's near instantaneous, small 16 megabyte Delta file like we talked about, really quick, really easy, no big deal, right? But if somebody wants to create a link clone on a different data store, so they're picking VMs from again, users to have no sense of data stores, and they're not thinking about all these things. All they're thinking is, I've got this thing in a catalog, I'm deploying to the VDC, and the VDC could be backed by multiple data store, and if vCloud Director happens to pick a data store that's different than the source, then we create something called a shadow VM, right? A shadow VM is essentially a full clone of the template for the first time that you create a link clone, right? So if you're a user the unlucky user that happened to create the link clone on a new data store for the first time, you'll see a little bit of a delay because we're creating a full clone and then spawning off a link clone off of that. But if you're lucky number 2 or number 3, you're fine, because from that point henceforth you can create near instantaneous link clones, right? And these shadow VMs are completely, they're not exposed to users, they're not exposed to organization administrators. It's the cloud administrator's dirty little secret, right? So that's the cloud administrator is the only one that sees these shadow VMs in play. Similarly, when you want to deploy link clones across vCenter servers, we use the exact same mechanism. We use shadow VMs, and we create a shadow VM on a data store that happens to be living on a different vCenter server, and then we deploy the first link clone. You're again going to see a but a delay in creating the link clone, because now you're subject to network latency and bandwidth and things like that. So the first one's going to be a little bit slow, and then from that point on, it's near instantaneous. So it's pretty cool and interesting because the feature lets you save on storage. It lets you just create instantaneous link clones, instantaneous clones in the cloud. And this can scale to your cloud because it can scale across multiple vCenter servers, and it can scale across multiple data stores. Cool. So the next feature I want to talk about, again, just in the same sort of improving agility, improving productivity, making things faster in the cloud, is something called vApp custom guest properties. Basically, what this feature is, if you are an app developer, if you are someone that creates apps and if you are an ISV or you create apps and you populate them in catalogs, now you have a mechanism to have users send custom data into the guest operating system, so you can customize the application with a lot of power, right? So we're able to create these key value pairs and embed them into the OVF environment. So each time, I have a screenshot that helps you sort of understand this a little bit better. So each time someone gets a workload in the cloud, it asks them for these custom values, right? So it helps you sort of customize the application much better. And it also helps cut down on application deployment time. It cuts down on application configuration time, because a lot of these values you're able to get from the user during deployment time. Here's an example. I've got got an SSH key that's so as a user goes through the workflow of deploying an application from the catalog, I'm asking for some custom properties, right? So I'm asking for an SSH key. In this case, I'm asking for a database password. It could be the location of a database. It could be the location of some backend services, some network services that are running. So you could take all of this information and you could put that into the guest operating system, and you can have your application access all of that and be configured with all that good information. So it really helps you spin up these applications and offer them much faster. So if you're scaling up your application, if you're scaling out your applications, all of these can be pushed into the application. So everything happens much faster. Things are more productive in the cloud environment. I've got some use cases here. So initializing personalization procedures, passing security keys, ton of use cases. Again, this is an enabling feature, so sky's the limit really. As to in fact, I'd look forward to hearing a lot of use cases from users as they use this feature and say, check out all these new use cases I've enabled, because you've got this mechanism to pass values into the guest operating system. If you're a developer in the cloud, this should be very exciting because we've got an expanded vCloud API. We're basically making it easier to program against the API and integrate with the API. So there's a lot more operations that are available in the UI are now exposed in the API. So it should help you write code faster and do more powerful things with the vCloud Director platform. We've also got expanded SDKs for Java, PHP, and .NET. And again, this is really about improving developer productivity and giving them a tool set of more things that they can do with the cloud environment, so we can see the next generation of applications come up with more powerful features. And we're also introducing a vCloud API query service. Again, this is exciting if you're a developer aimed at productivity improvements. If you're writing code, it used to be that you had to write dozens of code to find certain objects in the vCloud system. Now you're able to search and filter objects using this query service. So it should really reduce the net number of lines of code that you have to write against the system. And not only does it help you develop your application faster and talk to the system faster, it also improves the runtime performance because you're making less calls into the system, right? So it's a feature that's going to help you as a developer just take out applications to market much faster than you were able to in vCloud Director 1.0. So again, just sort of with the link clone improvements, with the improvements to sort of API and with all the SDKs that we improved, we're really trying to make it easier and faster to develop applications against the vCloud Director system, and we're also trying to make it much faster for end users as they experience we're trying to reduce the time that they spend waiting for applications to spin up in the cloud, and we're also trying to help IT by reducing the net storage costs of managing the cloud environment. Let me switch gears. What's the point of making everything faster if you can manage it, if you can simplify the management, right? So in the next section, I'll take about 10, 15 minutes to just talk about how we're simplifying management in this cloud environment. The first feature I want to talk about here is something called vCloud Messages. Now, we took the product out to market, and customers looked at us and said, "This thing is great. We love this thing. But what would be great if we could connect." So we've got all these other IT assets that are running in our enterprise. It would be really awesome if we could connect vCloud Director to all these IT assets. And we had one mechanism in 1.0, which was the API. So you could go one way, which is you could have an application developer write some code, and it would call into the vCloud API, and that was the way to integrate with other existing systems. But it would have been really cool to go the other way, which is how can you take information that's in vCloud Director and push it out to other systems. So we really looked at that problem, and we came up with a solution, which is our vCloud Messages feature. So it's really about taking vCloud Director and connecting it to other assets that you have running, such as CMDB systems, such as IPAM systems, ticketing systems. So there's a ton of systems that you use in IT to sort of manage your day-to-day as you look at managing all the assets. And we want to make sure that, one, you're able to manage vCloud Director in the cloud system with those assets. And secondly, we want to give visibility into what's happening in the vCloud Director system and be able to manage and visualize using tools that you already have in play in your data center. Requirements, it's kind of simple. You need a cloud, obviously. And you also need an AMQP-based enterprise message broker. So AMQP is a standard, and we just use that. Any message broker that supports the AMQP standard, we're okay with that. We have an example, RabbitMQ, which is a VMware, that's part of the vFabric and the Layer 2 set of products that we ship. So we have RabbitMQ that's available that can support this type of operation. And you also need a notification consumer, someone that can look at the message bus, someone that can get the messages out, and then someone that can take actions with the messages that are being passed. So it's really intended to give visibility from vCloud Director into other systems that are running in IT. Enabling messaging is real easy. So this is something that's enabled by the vCloud administrator. So you go in, you find the section which says blocking tasks, and you basically give the location of your AMQP-based messaging broker. You give the credentials, and you're off and running. You enable notifications. I'll talk about notifications versus blocking tasks in a second, but you enable it, and from that point on, vCloud Director is now ready to send a stream of events as to what's happening inside the system to this external messaging broker, so you can take actions outside of vCloud Director. There are two types of messages that you can pass in vCloud Director. The first one is called a notification, and notification is basically a stream of events, right? There's a ton of tasks that can be. You don't have to do any special configuration there's a ton of information that vCloud Director just pushes out to this messaging bus if you configure notifications. So these are completely asynchronous, so they push out the notification and vCloud Director continues operating as normal. The second type of message that you can post is something called a blocking task. Now this is a kind of message where it pushes out a notification to the message bus. Once it does that, it waits. It pauses that task, and it waits for external input. And I'll show you a couple of slides which sort of tell you what some of the use cases that you can use it for. But these are the two basic types of notifications or messages that you can push out from vCloud Director system. And in the case of blocking tasks, when it pushes it out for external input, somebody from the outside could resume the task, could fail the task, or abort the task based on some operation that happened outside of vCloud Director. Here's an example. I've got a vCloud Director system. I've got RabbitMQ, which is my messaging message broker, and I've got that connected to vCenter Orchestrator, which is an orchestration platform that VMware makes available for free. And then on the right-hand side of that, I've got a CMDB system, right? So I've got a stream of events. I'm going in, I'm configuring, I've got the messaging broker set up, and I'm configuring it to send notifications. Once it does that, for all of the actions that vCloud Director is taking, and there's over 100 tasks for which notifications are available, it keeps pushing out a constant stream of events, right? And once those events are received, then someone like vCenter Orchestrator, it doesn't have to be vCenter Orchestrator, but you've got some tool that's capable of communicating with the AMQP message broker can take that event and potentially populate a CMDB, right? It's not necessarily just restricted to a CMDB, but some back office system that you intend to populate for actions that are happening inside the cloud environment, right? So you want to make sure that you're gaining visibility, you're making sure that the rest of the assets outside know what's going on in the cloud system, and you're able to sort of, glue these things together. And that's important, and you're able to manage these things as sort of one system, and you're gaining visibility. Like I said, over 100 tasks have messages and notifications available, and you should be able to gain a lot of visibility into what's happening in the vCloud Director system. This is an example of a blocking task. As I mentioned earlier, a blocking task, if you configure a blocking task, then anytime somebody performs that operation, the task will be suspended, and it'll wait for external input, right? So in this case, I have an example of an upload operation, uploading a vApp template. vCloud Director makes it easy for users to bring in their content into the cloud, right? So you don't have to, so we provide a very easy transport mechanism, so we are able to take existing applications that are running in your data center, package them up as a vApp, and just stream it into the cloud using the API, right? So it's pretty easy to do that. But if you're IT and you're managing systems, you have policies in place that says, some applications are okay, or they must be compliant with all the policies that you have in play, right? So in this example, making sure that nobody puts something that's not okay inside the cloud, you're able to configure this vApp deploy operation to be something that blocks, right? So when it blocks, that operation is suspended, so that thing is not added into the catalog. A notification or a message is posted on the message bus, and then basically you can have I'm using a virus check tool, but it could be anything that enforces compliance. So you're able to take that content and you're able to make sure that content is compliant with your policies before it gets added to the catalog, right? So this is one example, but there's tons of opportunity for you to create these. So basically anything, and I'll talk about some more use cases in the next slide. So any operation that you wish to inspect before it completes, so things that you want to make sure it's compliant with policy, you configure a blocking task for it. And then you make sure that everything's going according to your policy, and then you let that proceed when you're happy with it. Configuring blocking tasks is real simple. So you just we have a whole set of operations that you can configure blocking tasks. It's not all of the events that have notifications. It's a subset of those, but you can browse and find the individual tasks. It's pretty granular. You can find the individual tasks that you want to block on, and then select that task, and then from that point on, for anyone that tries that task inside vCloud Director system, it will block, and you're able to take action before something bad happens, or to make sure that things are compliant in the cloud system. Some use cases for this, you can use messages to update external systems like I was talking about, so the notifications, backup systems that you have running outside IPAM systems to basically say, hey, all these VMs now have these IP addresses as part of my network, and I want to make sure I update my IPAM systems with that. CMDB systems to make sure that there's visibility into what's happening inside the cloud. Other tools that you have running in your network operations center. So making sure that you're connecting those two environments together, so you can leverage existing resources, use the same people that you use to manage, your NOC, your other tools. Have those same people use their skills to manage the cloud environment because now they're able to gain visibility into that environment. And like my previous example, when you're using blocking tasks, use it as a measure to check people and make sure that they're compliant, right? So if someone wants to go out and create a VDC or expand a VDC, block that operation, make sure you're doing the compliance checks, make sure you have capacity available, as an example, before the VDC is created. So you're not, the cloud is there's a lot of self-service and things happen fast, but in some cases you want to make sure you have the tools you need to slow things down, make sure everything is compliant. So connect your external IT assets to vCloud Director. Got some subliminal messaging there. The next feature I want to talk about, again, simplifying management, is we've looked at Cisco Nexus 1000V, and we're happy to say that we have full integration with the Cisco Nexus 1000V distributed switch. So in 1.0, we had support. We had limited support for the 1000V switch. In that, I'm not going to go into the details of networking in the interest of time, but there's the ability to spin up layer 2 isolated networks inside the vCloud Director system, right, to support isolated networking. Now with 1.5, you're able to create these VLAN-backed isolated networks and also this vCloud Director network isolation-backed networks. If you're scratching your head and wondering what that is, there's a great session called vCloud Director Networking, finally explained. I guess it wasn't explained last year very well. But it's finally explained now. So you can go attend that session and you can find out all these different types of networking. There's a ton of features that help you construct really complex networking topologies inside the cloud environment. So enterprises can recreate their operating environments inside the cloud with isolation and security and features like that. And they can do this. They can use those. They can create those environments now with the Cisco N1K. How this works? We use the embedded vShield manager to sort of help create these networks on a Cisco Nexus 1000V switch. So when somebody requests for an isolated network inside the cloud environment, vCloud Director reaches out to the vShield manager, which makes an API call and creates the isolated port group on the DV switch, right? And this can be isolated using either a VLAN, which again is managed by vCloud Director, or it can be isolated using the vCloud Director network isolation technology, which is, we use this MAC and MAC technology to create isolated networks so you're not burning VLANs. And both of these can now be used to create these isolated port groups on that Cisco Nexus 1000V switch. And then when the users deploy the VM, they're connected to that isolated environment, to that isolated network. So we're able to do that. That sounds cool, but what's the benefit? You've got Cisco tools that are in play, and service providers and enterprises want to make sure that we're able to leverage that same expertise, leverage those same tools, leverage those existing investments, and be able to connect those environments to the cloud. So we've got network administrators now that gain visibility into the cloud environment. They're able to inspect that switch. Now they have access to that port group. They know those VMs are connected to that port group, and they can use their regular monitoring tools to inspect that environment, to operationalize that environment. So it's a great way to bridge sort of the network administrator's world with the cloud world, right? So that's what we're trying to do. And it's, in a sense, simplify the management of cloud networking. And the icing on the cake is there's absolutely no impact to users, whether you're using a Cisco Nexus 1000V switch or if you're using a distributed switch, because they still get that isolated network that they want. Only IT happens to be managing that isolated network using Cisco tools or with Nexus 1000V distributed switch instead of a distributed virtual switch. This should be exciting for most people. So I remember last year I was introducing vCloud Director 1.0 in a breakout session similarly, and we had Oracle support and only Oracle support at the time. And about 150 hands went up and said, why only Oracle, why not SQL? So kind of redeeming myself a little bit over here. So we've added support for SQL Server in this release. So all you SQL maniacs out there, so all you SQL fanatics out there can go out and start building your cloud with SQL Server. So again, but it does let you build your cloud now with, you can leverage your existing skills in terms of database investments that you've made in your company and your enterprise for SQL Server, and also you can build your cloud with net less cost, right? Because you've got SQL Server in play that's supporting. In terms of it absolutely makes no difference whether you're using SQL Server or Oracle to support the cloud environment. So you can go out and build these clouds now with SQL Server support. Here's a little. Here's a list of supported databases. This is in no way a comprehensive list. For the latest list of supported databases, please go to our website, go to the installation configuration guide, make sure that your database is supported. But we are adding support for SQL Server 2005 and 2008. So you're able to go out and build your clouds using these databases. vSphere 5 support. It's important. We just announced vSphere 5, and vCloud Director is part of the next wave of products that's going to support vSphere 5 and help you take some of the power that vSphere 5 delivers into the cloud environment. So we're able to take features such as the 32 vCPU and 1 terabyte VRAM. And if you saw that monster VRAM thing that we were talking about, a little picture of a VM with hands and legs, no? A couple of people. It's kind of cool. You should go check it out. We have T-shirts, Monster VM. So we're able to offer those monster VMs inside the cloud. So we're able to offer VM environments for the most demanding applications, because now you've got the processing power and you've got to run those applications inside the cloud environment. And to make things operationally more efficient, to make things easier to manage, to deploy ESXi hosts faster, we're also supporting auto deploy. So when you want to scale up your cloud and when you want to make changes to your cloud with things like host profiles, with things like auto deploy, you're able to easily spin up more ESX hosts to scale your cloud. So we're able to do that with the support for vSphere 5 in vCloud Director 1.5. Obviously, cloud is global scale. Everyone wants to run cloud. There's a lot of demand. We want to make sure that people, even non-English speaking people, can use cloud and they can leverage the power of cloud. So we've added a ton of support for globalization. Now we're supporting vCloud Director in languages like Japanese, simplified Chinese, German, French, Spanish, Italian. So vCloud Director now speaks 7 languages. It's awesome. We're also so we've got a ton of customers in all these countries that are pretty excited, have been asking about this feature. So I'm very happy to say that now we have this available in vCloud Director 1.5. Okay, so I've talked about how we've made things faster. I've talked about how we've made things simpler. Just to sort of summarize, we had the messaging feature, which helps you connect your vCloud Director assets to your cloud assets to your other enterprise IT assets, so you can sort of bridge those two worlds together and you can manage them in a better way, and you can gain visibility to what's happening inside the cloud environment. The Cisco Nexus 1000V is important because the network administrator now has the ability to peer into, to sort of peek into the cloud environment and to make changes and to monitor and to be aware of all the things that are happening in the cloud environment as VMs exchange network traffic. And the SQL Server support should be exciting for all your SQL Server shops out there, and vSphere 5 support and globalization support. Security. So we absolutely, so everyone, this is top of mind for most people as we talk about cloud and we talk about private cloud and public cloud. Is the cloud secure is a pretty important topic that comes up. So we looked at how can we make things more secure in the cloud. And we looked at expanded vShield integration, right? So vShield is the integrated product that provides the security features in the cloud environment. It helps you with the isolation of tenants. It helps you with providing firewall services and other network edge services that help you secure your cloud environments and isolate tenants from each other and provide isolated networks for communication inside the cloud. So basically, we're adding support for 5-tuple firewall rules in vShield with vCloud Director, and we're also adding. I'm excited to talk about this integrated IPsec VPN capability, site-to-site VPN connections that you can spin up using vCloud Director and vShield. Somebody's clapping slowly. Right, and it's important because we really, I mean, the cloud security is interesting because, we want customers to start thinking about, cloud is a dynamic, elastic environment, and, you need the software security rules and the software firewall and the software edge routers really go a long way to blend in with the cloud environment and to react as the cloud environment changes. So it's important that we pack that that environment with a lot of, enterprise class security features, so you can take advantage of the cloud environment and not really be scared about security in the cloud. So now with 5-tuple firewall rules, now you can configure firewall rules with source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, and protocol. So that gives you more flexibility. It gives you the ability to create complex firewall rules, making things more secure. Now you have a lot more tools at your disposal to create these firewall rules. We're also adding support for the ICMP protocol when you have a choice of protocol as to what protocol do you want to set firewall rules on. We're able to now select ICMP. We're also adding support for defining syslog targets, right? So when you create these firewall rules, vShield Edge can now log all network traffic that's going through the firewall. So you have that, the ability to audit and sort of do compliance checks and make sure that you have visibility into exactly what's happening in that firewall. We're adding support for static routing. So we heard this from customers and we responded. So now you're able to configure static routes for these vShield edge routers. Now, not sure how many of you know, so there's different types of networking that's available in the cloud environment, and there are these routed networks. And when you route networks is when we deploy the vShield Edge firewall router. So anytime you have a routed network, you're able to deploy these edge services. So in addition to these firewall services, in addition to static routing, you can actually see the tabs on top. You also have DHCP services, you have NAT services, and you have some different services that are available as part of, that are integrated into the cloud environment that the vShield Edge router can provide right out of the box. All right, let me talk a little bit about IPsec site-to-site VPN. Again, so I talked about sort of, security needs to be embedded into the cloud environment. It needs to be reactive enough because the cloud environment is elastic and dynamic, right? So we want to make sure that if somebody wants to create an IPsec, and we talk about hybrid cloud all the time, so this is a key enabling technology for a hybrid cloud, right? So let's say you want to connect a couple of assets over the internet or some unsecure connection, and you want to create a VPN connection. Chances are that you'll use that VPN connection for a little bit, but it's not like a permanent connection because it's a cloud environment. You want to quickly connect the two assets together. You want to do some work, but then after that, you're done, right? But imagine if you had to do this in a physical world, or if somebody had to run around, file a ticket, make sure punch a few holes through, or set up VPN connections using physical devices. It's a pain. And then if you're not going to use it, it just doesn't justify that investment in time and energy, right? So we want to do this in an easy to use self-service fashion. So the cloud admin and the guys at the infrastructure level do not have to get involved when somebody wants to set up a VPN connection, right? So we want to give tools to the organization administrator so they can easily set this up in a self-service fashion. So that's what we've delivered with this particular feature, right? So you can now enable site-to-site VPN services. It's completely integrated into, it's embedded in the vShield Edge router that's deployed between networks. As part of the Edge services, it also lets you configure VPN services. There's 3 different deployment models, so you can set up a VPN connection between 2 clouds, a couple of organization router networks between clouds. You could connect a couple of organizations within the same cloud because, I mean, as long as you have 2 peer vShield Edge routers, then you can reach in and set up these connections. Or if you have a VPN endpoint, like a physical device that's providing services back in the enterprise, say, then you can reach out to those devices and set up a VPN connection. So all of these are tools that are available now to the organization administrator to make this happen. So when a user says, hey, I want to, I've got this app, but it needs to authenticate against resources that are sitting in the corporate data center. Now the organization administrator can make that happen in a cheap and inexpensive fashion, right? So it's pretty powerful to enable the connectivity between 2 different clouds, whether public and private, or 2 different data centers that are private, so you don't need to buy and invest in expensive equipment and skills to make that happen. like I mentioned, so you just when you're configuring the VPN connection, just select the type of VPN connection. So I could connect to a network in the same organization. I could connect to a network in a different organization. Or I could connect to a remote network, which is the VPN endpoint. I could use different encryption protocols to set up the VPN connection. All of these are available at the disposal of the organization administrator now, so that's important. If you want to connect to a different cloud, you just type in the URL of the cloud. You type in the organization that you want to connect to, and the organization administrator credentials to connect. And once you connect into the organization, it basically shows you a list of routed networks that are available in that organization, and you can just establish a connection between those two vShield Edge routers, and now you're connected in a secure fashion, right? So you can. It's really a key enabling technology for the hybrid cloud. And hopefully this is starting to come together in your minds in terms of when we talk about hybrid cloud, a lot of questions about exactly how would you connect these pieces together, exactly what do you need, what is the level of investment needed to connect these pieces together. So hopefully you can see sort of VMware making investments to make it easier and faster and cheaper to connect resources together and build hybrid clouds. Connecting to a VPN endpoint, just a simple screenshot again, that is possible to just reach out to a device, like a physical device that's offering VPN services, and make a connection with that device and start leveraging your VPN tunnel. It's all about reducing costs. It's all about making things more secure, and we want to make sure that it's as self-service as possible and things happen quicker and faster. And the good thing is, let's say once the work is done and you want to tear down this environment, it's near instantaneous. You don't have to make any calls. Nobody's complaining because they ran around, for 5 days setting up this connection. Now you want it torn down, right? So everyone's happy. You're able to set up these connections just for the time that it takes, that you need it available for, and then you're able to tear it down when you no longer need it. So it's really cheap and inexpensive to create these and to tear them down. So I talked about sort of, the OVF environment and the API allowing you to transfer workloads between clouds. Now, once you have this VPN connection in place, now you've got those two environments bridged together. There's a lot of things you can do. You can move workloads between them. You can set up authentication. There's a lot of use cases that come up once you've got those two things connected. I also want to sort of, since I was talking about connecting resources together, I thought I'd talk a little bit about, we announced a couple of different products. I'll talk about, how many of you, just a quick sort of show of hands, how many of you have seen or heard about vCloud Connector? It's a fair number of people. So it's software that we make available for free, which helps you bridge between sort of, vSphere and cloud, as well as private and public or two private clouds. So it's that software that helps you manage these cloud environments using, single panes of glass. So you can perform operations. So you could be a vSphere administrator. You happen to be using some cloud resources. It could be a private cloud instance or a public cloud instance. And within a tab in your vSphere client, now you're able to perform operations on cloud assets, right? So we want to make sure we bridge those two worlds together so you're able to operate them in a consistent fashion, right? So you're able to see the resources that are available in your private or public clouds. You're able to move VMs, and I mentioned, right? So all this work that we put into sort of layer 2 communication, the OVF, the vCloud API, is for one thing, which is we want enterprises to be able to take their workloads, their existing workloads, move them into the cloud operating environment without any changes, right? And that's important, right? We don't want enterprises to go out and make tons of investments in writing new applications, to understanding a cloud operating environment, which is completely different from the enterprise operating environment. We want to take exactly things as is and move them into the cloud and get the benefits of the cloud environment. So with vCloud Connector, we're able to move things very easily. And once they're moved in, now you got the visibility into that environment, so they pop up in your vSphere client because you've got the plugin, and you're able to perform operations on these assets that are now running in the cloud environment. So that's pretty cool. We also launched, not sure if you all saw the announcement, we got a public beta of vCloud Connector 1.5 that's going on. We got some new features that help you with reliable transfer of workloads, that help you with better management interfaces. So there's a ton of, I'm not going to read every feature that's in there, but basically helping you manage your cloud assets better, making it easy to transport, making things more reliable, things like that. So we've added a ton of new features, and it's available for download. If you have a VMware Store account, you can go download the software, try it out. Seriously, go try it out, get a cloud instance, take some of your vSphere resources, move that, and you'll have a great experience. The other announcement we made was vcloud.vmware.com. So there's been we have a lot of service provider partners that are offering resources. So we also launched a portal, vcloud.vmware.com, that helps you locate these services and understand the services that they offer in their cloud environment. So we want to make it easy for customers to go find these services and consume these services. So with that, hopefully you start seeing these things come together with sort of some of the investments that we're making in bridging these environments together, and how assets like vCloud Connector and vcloud.vmware.com sort of help you find the resources, use them, connect them together, things like that. So in summary, we made things faster. We talked about link clones. So if you're looking at doing development in the cloud, if you're looking at doing use cases where you want to share things more easily, make things faster, you can do that now. We've also made things simpler. We've made investments in connecting assets together. We've made investments in getting your Cisco Nexus 1000B integrated. We've made investments in vSphere 5 support and SQL Server support. And we've also made things more secure and easy to communicate, and in a sense, help you build a hybrid cloud. So I'm going to stop right there. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll take questions now. And if you have any questions, could you please walk up to that microphone? Or there's one right behind you, so feel free to walk up to the microphone.
So I have a question. All your examples are IPv4. Can you make a statement about IPv6 and relationship to vCloud?
Right. So we have. Was your question about IPv6 support? So we have limited IPv6 support. I believe that the vCloud Director cells can use IPv6. Is there someone from the product management team here? No, sorry. So, is that Brad? Sure. So we have someone from engineering. I'll defer that question to. So in terms of what IPv6 support we have, I'll defer to Brad's on the engineering team. But in terms of roadmap, we can't really discuss sort of roadmap items. But if you can find a product manager and sign an NDA, I'm sure we'd be happy to discuss when you can expect full IPv6 support in vCloud.
So I'm with HP, so we have a nice NDA we can stand on.
Yeah, I can't discuss it here. Next question.
So in terms of the GIST customization that you had, is that customization list kind of a finite set of tasks that it can do after the fact, or is it this open-ended?
It's open-ended. So it's basically, it lets you create key value pairs. So anything that you want, you can create and push that into the operating system, right? So you can have the user pretty much, it's open.
So when I say open, I mean, let's say you've got to walk through a wizard for configuration of something post-fact. You can push it through that entire wizard, whatever that happens to be.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, for the VLAN backed and VDC network isolated backed integration with the Nexus 1000V, does that require vSphere 5?
I want to say, well, I think it does. I'm not 100% sure about that because it's a vShield integration. So I know it requires the vShield Manager 5, but I think that's about it. But I believe vShield Manager requires vSphere 5. So I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
But check on the sort of the installation configuration guide, and some of the requirements should be documented there. I want to say yes, but definitely double check on that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm sorry if I missed this because I wasn't there for the first 10 minutes, but how about the setup process? Have you done anything different, or do I still need to install all these separate components and then hook them up together?
We have not. So you're talking about sort of automating setup and things like that?
So I currently need to have a Linux instance and put a
so we have not changed the operating environment, so you still need a Linux box to run vCloud Director cells. But we have changed, so now we have SQL Server support, so you can use the SQL Server system.
How about the vShield?
vShield is still the same form factor. It's a V app that's deployed, so that experience has not changed considerably.
Okay, but so there's no one-click installer or anything tying up all these things?
As of right now, no. You'll have to get the pieces separately and get them together.
All right, thanks.
But it's, having installed it many times, at least for me, it's pretty easy. It shouldn't be too hard at all to install these components.
Hi, just a couple of quick questions. For those people that were running Oracle as a database, now with SQL support, have you created tools to help us migrate our Oracle database to SQL?
We're right now not talking about or announcing any sort of migration help at this time. We're still sort of figuring out what the right sort of way of doing that is. In fact, we don't to be honest, we don't even know what percentage of customers would want to migrate their Oracle to SQL or things like that. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you.
No problem.
But if you can shoot me that question, I can definitely follow up on that.
Another question about vShield Edge devices. When we deployed the prior generation of vCloud, we found a problem where we needed to assign a public IP address to the Edge device, and then we couldn't NAT with that address. We needed to assign another public address for NATing to the internal subnets. Has that been resolved?
I don't think so. As far as I know, I don't think so. But you could check with Brad. Although I don't think he worked on the on the vShield piece. This would be again something that I had to follow up. But I don't think we've addressed that.
Okay. Sorry, one more question. With regards to the latest release of vCloud, can I hook it up to my vSphere 4.1 infrastructure,
Absolutely.
or must I run?
Absolutely, but for some things like fast provisioning, you need vSphere 5.0. And for the Cisco Nexus 1000V, I believe you need the new vShield manager, and then you need the vShield, the vSphere 5.0. But if you're using a vSphere 4.1 cluster, you just will not be able to do fast provisioning. Again, and if you want things like the larger VMs, like 32 vCPUs and 1 terabyte of RAM, all of those are only supported by vSphere 5.
Okay.
Do you have to upgrade to vShield 5? But to do that, do we need to upgrade to vShield 5?
Do you need to upgrade to vShield
Okay.
5?
Thank you.
Do linked clones have the same performance as fully hydrated VMs?
As full clones?
Yeah. Full VMs, yeah.
Yeah. So we're working on a performance white paper, and we'll have that published shortly. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head as to exactly what the performance.
There is a hit though.
Yeah, because you have links, right? So you have to you do have to traverse up links, but in terms of impact, I mean, one, is it perceivable? Is it a huge impact? It depends on the workload, and that needs some serious performance testing. So we have a performance group that's looking at the performance of link clones. Now, this is not new technology that we've invented. We've had it in our Lab Manager product. We had it in our View product. So these are technologies that are proven, and there's a lot of customers that are using some of these technologies even in production. So we're leveraging some of the platform capabilities in terms of link clones. So we're not writing something net new in vCloud Director. So you should be able to use these without too much because we've done a ton of work in the vSphere platform to make these more performant and to make these as close to full clones as possible. But once we have that white paper, you'll have that information.
Okay, thank you.
Say again? Absolutely. So you mean like consolidate? To a full clone, yes, absolutely. You can convert to a full clone.
Hey, when you create a blocking message, how does the consumer side know how to respond? Is it a callback in the payload?
It is. You use the API to communicate basically with the task ID and sort of what your response is. So you'd parse out the message, you'll figure out the task ID, and then you'd respond with basically a resume, abort, or fail based on a set of operations that you've done on the outside. So and it's done via the API or the SDK.
That's a message that goes back.
For that case, you communicate with the vCloud Director system. So you use the vCloud API to send that response back.
Oh, it doesn't go through the message then.
It doesn't have to go through the messaging.
Well, so that's my next question is does vCloud also have a consumer that can you go the other way, in other words?
How do you mean?
Can I have an external process that is producing messages that vCloud is listening to, consuming?
That's the vCloud API. So that was already available in 1.0. So you can just call into. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, but I mean through the message bus.
So you'd have to. It would have to be an explicit API call. So I don't think vCloud can only respond to messages that it generates. It can't pick up random messages at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Currently, we are using Lab Manager 4.0, and we are planning to upgrade that to vCloud Direct 1.5. So, what would the migration path of current configurations what we have?
You can't upgrade your Lab Manager installation in place. So you'd have to reconstruct a vCloud Director environment and take your environment and recreate it. But we are working on some services that are going to help you sort of automate some of that, or to gather all the information and make it easy. I just don't have the time frame for the availability of the service, but we're investing in making it easy for Lab Manager customers to take advantage of the enhanced scale, things like cross data store link clones and things like that. So you can your whole lab management experience becomes a lot better in vCloud Director because of the scale and being able to burst out to potential public clouds and things like that. But we are investing in some services to make it easy.
So, it's okay.
We can probably continue the conversation right outside the room. But thanks so much, guys.